Good morning, everybody. We are back. It is the first week of 2023, and we took a couple weeks off. End of last year, we had a nice wrap up. Our last live was like a wrap up of 2022. So we're hitting the ground running today, talking about marketing a scaling business and brand.
Yes, I'm so excited.
So my name is Elizabeth McFadden, and I am the CEO and Director of Brand Strategy at Novella Brand House.
Hi, you guys. I'm April Beach. I am the CEO of the Sweet Life Company, and so excited to be here. I love this show. I can't wait.
It's really good. And I saw that we had several people signed up to watch today. Also, remember, you can, any of the shows that I host, which are about marketing and branding, typically scaling, well, always about that, but always about scaling businesses. You can find those on the Novella Brand House YouTube channel. So you can always go back and listen to them. I mean, you can kind of listen to them like a podcast, put them on in your car, what have you, but they're always no more than 15 minutes. So let's dive in today, because I think this is an important topic. You know, things tend to slow down in December, and, you know, the last couple weeks are usually pretty quiet and pretty slow, but the first week of January is always very busy. And today is our second day back in the office. We were closed on Monday for New Year's Day, but this is the second day back, and it has been very busy already because people have new budgets, or they look at it like it's a brand new year. If they're on their calendar year, they've like started over with what their sales goals are and that type of thing for the year. So everybody's hitting the ground running. And especially if you're B2B, this is a great time to make sure that you have your marketing strategy in place, because most likely your customers or potential customers are looking for, you know, your services. So I want to jump in and start with the fact that if you're a scaling business, and you're probably at a point where one of two things has happened, which is why you're interested in this conversation. Okay. First is that you are, you know, whether you are a startup or a fairly new company, and you've really hit that hockey stick of growth, and things are, you know, all cylinders are firing, you're growing like crazy, and you are scaling. Maybe you're scaling to 1 million, 10 million, you know, and beyond, right? And so what you were doing at that startup phase or at that early phase in your business in terms of marketing really does have to be looked at. You cannot keep doing what you were doing then as a scaling company from a marketing perspective. The other thing is, you're past the startup phase. You're all, you know, last year and the year before, you were a scaling company, and you're still scaling. But what you are finding is that the level of competition at this stage, at this point where you are in your business, is a lot more savvy in terms of marketing and their brand than what you were dealing with before. And so that means that you need to level up your brand and level up your marketing. So we're going to talk about, how do you even approach that? I mean, I think people know that. I think if you're listening to this, you're like, yeah, that's exactly where I am. But how do I do that?
And Liz, can I just like make a quick comment here for you guys? Just like we look at your systems, you know, what we did as far as operational systems and internal things and teams that we did to get that business to a certain place, the same applies for marketing. But I love this conversation because I don't think people realize that. They feel the pain maybe of not having a big enough team or not being able to actually operationally function with ease. But I don't think that they actually realize that their marketing actually has to change as well. So I'm really excited about what you're going to say.
Yeah. And you know what you just said makes me want to say something before I jump into this, is that I think what people think is that they need to automatically spend more money. Okay. Or they need to add people to their team. They're like, oh, I need to hire somebody to do social media for me, or I need to hire an ad agency, or I need to, you know, hire a graphic designer. I mean, whatever, or a salesperson, like whatever that might look like. I'm not saying sales is marketing. Those are two different things. But I mean, you know, you see where I'm going with this, right? I think people kind of jump into those things, and you may need to you may need to increase your marketing budget. Okay. You may need to hire somebody on your team. But before you do that, here are the things that you need to look at. Okay. The first thing, and I want to note that in the notes of this LinkedIn Live event on LinkedIn, I've noted these things as well. So you can kind of go back and find, there's some good questions there. And I put all that in the description of this event because we won't have time to talk about it in 15 minutes. You can kind of go back and look at that. And I will also include it in the YouTube if you want to go back and look at that. But the first thing is the target audience. Okay, and if you've listened to any of these LinkedIn Lives with me, I do talk a lot about really knowing your target audience. But here's what I want to say about this, because obviously if you're at this point, you have identified your target audience. But here's the question that you have to ask yourself at this point. Is the target audience that I've identified and have been going after, right, focusing on, is that still my primary audience? A lot of times when you're a scaling company, you evolve, and sometimes the customers that maybe helped kind of build your business or start you off at the beginning really are not your bread and butter, or the kind of people that you really want to build your business on going forward. Perfect example of that is this company, Novella Brand House. We originally started as working with startups and solopreneurs, and we quickly kind of outgrew that just based on the services that we were providing. And we started working with scaling companies about 4 or 5 years ago. And so there's an example of where, as your company evolves and grows, and as your value proposition grows and changes, so does, your audience does too. So take a hard look at, is the audience that you have identified as your primary audience, is that still who you want to build your business with? Okay. And make sure you're focusing your efforts on the types of customers that you want going forward. The second thing is brand positioning. And again, this is at this point, I know most of, if you are scaling, you really do know your positioning, but make sure you're really carving out that niche. Be sure that you're being clear about it. And are people aware of who you are? I think that's a big thing, is that you have to keep growing your awareness. And the bigger you get and the bigger those competitors get, the harder that you need to work at people being aware of you. They can't buy from you if they don't know you exist and know who you are. And as kind of part of that, you've got to make sure that you're very clear about the value proposition that you bring and the pain points that you solve. So that kind of is a brand position, but also just brand awareness. Are you, from a marketing perspective, still increasing your awareness? I think a lot of times what we focus on is, leads and sales leads. And sometimes when we focus on awareness, we feel like, well, I can't measure that as easily as the sales part of it. And so people sort of ignore that. But again, for those sales leads, or for those kinds of sales tactics that you're using in marketing, for those to be effective, people have to at least have heard of you or know who you are, right? April, I feel like, you're muted. Do you want to add in there?
No, I'm just sitting here going, right. Myself and my dogs. I'm like, yes. Well, I'm feeling all this so much too. Like for our business, I mean, our audience has changed over the last couple of years as well. And so as you're going through this, and just in full transparency, you guys, we use Novella Brand House for our brand positioning strategy. I'm going, oh my gosh, we need to get another meeting on the calendar, because I need to make sure we're nailing all these things as you're saying them.
Yeah. And these are all things, again, I feel like every company should be sort of going through this checklist at the beginning of every year and making sure you're on track, right? Okay. Visual brand is the next thing. The larger that you get as a company and the more successful that you get, so do your competitors. Okay. And the larger a company and sort of the bigger you are, that means there's more attention on your visual brand. That's your logo, your website, how you are visually communicating what your brand is. So I feel like you get a little more grace the smaller company that you are, or the younger company, or a startup. But as your company grows and matures, if your visual brand is not tight, okay, it's not consistent, if it doesn't look professional, people are judging you.
Right.
And maybe not giving you a second look after that. So that absolutely, if you're still using a logo that's really not high res and looks like crap sometimes, that at this point is not okay. All of that stuff has to be tight and it has to be consistent. Just period, end of story. Your website, remember, this is really the only thing that is marketing and advertising for you 24/7, 365 days a year. Okay. And you completely control the narrative there. You control what it looks like. And so again, just as kind of what, as I said with the visual brand, make sure that's really tight. Look at it from a perspective of somebody that doesn't know a lot about your company. They've stumbled upon you somehow. So maybe they heard about you, they found you in search, what have you. And are you communicating kind of what we talked about a little bit earlier? First of all, are you communicating to the target audience that you want to bring into your business, that you want to build your business, that you want to work with in 2023? Secondly, are you super clear on that value proposition and what you do for your customers and how you're different from the competitors, right? Okay, last two things, the marketing and social media piece of this, right? Okay, so we've been talking about marketing. All these things have to do with marketing, but let's talk about strategy and the plan and things like that. So again, I think if you're a startup or if you're a younger company, maybe you just maybe you're planning your marketing about 8 weeks in advance or 3 months in advance. But now you're at a point where maybe you have a team working with you on that marketing. Maybe you're working with an ad agency. Maybe, you're probably working with a much bigger budget than you were before. And so you can't be just sort of like flying by the seat of your pants with it. I recommend that you have either a 6-month or a 12-month strategy. And that marketing strategy should be kind of a mix of what I would call traditional and digital marketing. So even if you're an online business, completely online, yes, probably most of your budget is going to be spent in digital, but you also need to have some kind of traditional things in there as well. There needs to be networking in there. You need to be attending events, that kind of thing, right? The content strategy or your plan around your content is also a part of your marketing strategy. So again, don't just be hopping on your social media channels week to week and posting whatever comes to mind. All of that needs to be really thought out and strategic because that's a part of your the sales strategy. And finally, process. For any of this stuff, and this is true with anything that you do in terms of for a scaling company, you have to have processes for everything. That also includes your marketing. Whether you outsource everything, have a process for how that works. If you have a team of people, they need to have a process for everything that they do for your marketing. So with 1.5 minutes left, I'm gonna leave it there. April, any thoughts or questions that you have, or what comes to mind for you?
Well, these are all obviously really good, important things that everybody needs to cover. I think as somebody who is not a brand positioning expert like you are, I think for the rest of us who are listening to what you're teaching, I think there is this disconnect, and maybe it's just me personally. I think there's this disconnect, for example, when you're talking about the value proposition of knowing why we're different and then being able to effectively communicate it. So
Right.
I think there's like a 1-2 punch with a lot of these. So as somebody who's also sitting here listening to Liz and going through this, I'm thinking myself, okay, what do we know? What is the strategy we know? But then can we implement it? And how do we do that? So
Right.
I think that that's what we're feeling as you're saying this, or are we executing this well? Again, another reason why people should connect with you if they're like us, where we know it, but sometimes we struggle actually implementing it or putting it into words. It's very important. Knowing is not taking action and effectively communicating. So I will just leave that there. It's a great show. Thank you so much. It's great.
Yeah, thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
and if anybody has any questions, reach out to me, Elizabeth at novellabrandhouse.com. All right, all. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.